Here we go! The Game Boy Player is, to me, the most interesting peripheral for the GameCube. It's essentially the only reason why I kept my GameCube for so many years, even though the Wii can play GameCube games and emulate the Game Boy games. Well, my GameCube's disk drive has been broken since 2017, so I have been waiting for the chance to grab an optical drive emulator, which is a device that allows loading homebrew and games from an SD card. I wanted to get the GC loader, but it was too expensive for what I intended to use it for. As I said before, I already have a way to play GameCube games. It was at this time that the Flippy drive was getting released, so I thought to get that instead, but trying to buy it day one proved to be a challenge. Before I realized, it had already sold out. This forced me to sit it out for a bit until a few months later when I heard about the existence of another device known as the Cube ODE. I decided to get that instead, which ended up being the cheapest option available at the time. I got it for about 25 bucks. Once I got it, I soon found out that it's basically a clone of the GC loader. But it's apparently nowhere near as good. I tested a dozen or so games and 2 of them would not start through Swiss. Mario Party 4 and Fire Emblem. Not a deal breaker for me because you need people to enjoy Mario Party, and Fire Emblem can be played on a Wii with just a Wiimote on its side. Once you play it like this, it's hard to go back. Being a clone of the GC loader is perfect for me because if I build homebrew for the GameCube, I can target GC loader support and not have to worry about anything outside the app itself. What happens now? Well, I started checking out some homebrew. The Game Boy interface is an essential tool for using the Game Boy Player, and I found out that I can do something that I didn't think was possible. GBI can read a multi-boot ROM, which is a tiny program that can run on the Game Boy Advance regardless if a cartridge is inserted or not. Normally, you activate this mode by holding Start and Select at the Game Boy logo screen, sending the program via link cable. But the Game Boy interface can send multi-boot programs without the link cable, and it can even write back data to the GameCube's SD card. Because of this, you can dump the BIOS, the ROM, the save file, and restore save files. Now this is where the real fun begins, because by being able to restore save files, it's possible to modify the save from within the GameCube side and restore it to the Game Boy side. This opened up some cool possibilities. For example, one could make a save editor for the GameCube and try that modified save file directly on the Game Boy Player without any cable or PC. But here's what I wanted to use it for. During the early days of the Game Boy Advance, it was not uncommon for games to have content locked away unless you attended an event or played multiplayer or bought a special game that happened to have the distribution data. It was actually a cool thing back then that sort of gave more value to your games knowing that you had access to some rare item or feature. I have now managed to complete a program that applies this bonus data to a save file. Here it is, the GBA bonus pack. Yeah, coming up with names has never been my thing. Out of my GBA collection, I happen to have 4 titles that support this special content. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and 4 Swords, Sonic Advance, Sonic Advance 2, and Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. So it works like this. You boot up GBI, you hold Start and Select and get into the dumper. You dump the save, and once it succeeds, you can hold X, B, and Start for a few seconds to return to the Swiss menu. Now you can start GBA bonus pack and select your game. Once you have applied the content you want, you can exit back to the Swiss menu and start GBI again. Start the dumper again and select Restore to apply the changes to your game. It's quite simple, right? Regarding the games, I'm going to talk a bit about what their special content is and what my program does to help. I'm also including some titles that are not on my collection. First we have Zelda: A Link to the Past and 4 Swords. This game had a fetch quest for a sword technique and an entire dungeon locked away unless you had a link cable, another copy of the game, another GBA, and then you had to go through all of the 4 Swords portion of the game. My program makes it so that the 4 Swords portion is finished, giving you immediate access to the bonus content. Fair warning, while the changes to the save file work like they should, GBI was not able to restore this save no matter how many times I tried. It was still a lot of work to support this specific game, so it's still a part of the program. It's also possible that this can be fixed in the future, but since this is a GBI problem, it's beyond my control. Then we have The original Fire Emblem, also known as Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade to those who are knowledgeable about their Magvilles and Ostias, this one got a distribution event at home if you bought Mario Kart Double Dash. The bonus disc it came with contained this event, and what it does is give you access to some rare items. The next game is Fire Emblem The Secret Stones. This game only got a distribution event in Japan, but a few years ago someone discovered that the transfer menu is easily accessible by adding the correct data to the save file. The transfer menu can contain pretty much any item. The data you get here are just some rare items handpicked by me, including the Bulnerary with more capacity and the Juna Fruit, which decreases a unit's level, allowing you to gain more stats. The next games are Sonic Advance and Sonic Advance 2. These games can store one Xiao at a time for transferring to Sonic DX or Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. The rare Tails Xiao can only be officially obtained by buying Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2. While in Japan, you could also get an Amy or Knuckles Xiao from a distribution event. My tool allows sending any of these Xiao, overriding the original if one exists. And it will also change your ring count to 1000, but only if you have less than 1000 rings, similar to the distribution event. These Xiao have specific stats, so if you use cheating devices to obtain them, the data won't be exact. That's why I wanted a way to get them properly. I also included support for Sonic Pinball Party. Though its save file functions identically to the other Sonic games, Pinball Party had a double pack release as well. If you have this cartridge, my tool will not work with it because the save file layout is slightly different. And while it's not super useful to have these Xiao on the Game Boy saves, in the future, I'll be sharing another program that handles sending Xiao from GBA saves to the virtual memory card that's used by Swiss, Devolution, or Nintendo, as long as it contains a save file for Sonic DX or Sonic Adventure 2 Battle.
I didn't think I'd have to do this, but I have no choice.
Now I might as well make a quick shout out to another game that had a distribution event, but only in Japan. I'm talking about Konjiki no Gashville Unare Jujo no Sakeru 2, or how it was supposed to be called in the West, Satch Bell Electric Arena 2. This one was pretty interesting to me because it's a licensed game and I worked on the fan translation. Its special content was a new playable character and an item that basically proves the player was at the event. Eventually they released a password that could unlock the character, but there was no way to obtain the event exclusive item.
Satch, ready? Yeah!
My fan translation offers a solution to this, so I've excluded this game from my program.
The only way he can beat me now is if he goes supersonic.
And finally, I wanted to support the king of distribution events, Pokemon. Pokemon had quite a lot of stuff going on, and I'm honestly kind of surprised I was able to support it because it was the most tedious part of the program to make, and it's all because the save file is huge, the checksums are complicated, and the Pokemon themselves are encrypted data that can't be modified in certain ways without sacrificing the validity of the Pokemon. Well, with my program, you just get the option to transfer a Jirachi, whose data comes directly from the Colosseum bonus disc, or if you're lucky, the Pokemon channel. Or if you're even luckier, you'll get a shiny version of the Jirachi. It doesn't replicate the exact probability of receiving a shiny, so you don't have to be that lucky. The other Pokemon you can transfer are the unused Celebi from the Japanese version of the bonus disc, a Pikachu that comes from that disc, a Mystery Mew, or Aura Mew, and the special eggs you can get from Pokemon Box. These are cool because the Pichu one knows Surf, I think. Ah yes, one thing I almost forgot to mention. If you're transferring a Pokemon that's not Jirachi, you will be blocked off by Professor Oak, who will tell you that in order to receive this Pokemon, you must pass a trivia test called the Poke Quiz. And if you manage to get a perfect score, you will be asked if you wish to add some event-exclusive items like the Eon ticket. Or if using an Emerald save file, it would also add the old Sea map, which is used to find the wild Mew. I really wanted to support the Pokemon saves because it wouldn't be too difficult now to change things up a bit and allow users to trade Pokemon between saves directly from the GameCube, and that seemed to me like a really cool idea that I might explore later on. Eventually, you could even go further and make it possible to transfer GBA Pokemon to Colosseum or XD.
But it take a little time.
There is a silver lining about not being able to restore the Zelda save. It has pushed me to get RetroArch compiling for the GameCube with GC Loader support. GPSP works incredibly fast on the GameCube, even without dynamic recompilation. So that'll be interesting to look forward to if you want to expand what you can do on the GameCube with a GC Loader. I've also made this app available for the Wii out of convenience, but note that more visually appealing versions exist for Wii. as I originally worked on this before wanting to support the GameCube. It would have been too much work to get these working on the GameCube, so I made this much simpler app to get things going. In order to modify save files, you need to figure out how the checksum works. I was quite lucky. All the games supported already had some documentation or tools available. The Tiny Chow Gardens check was decompiled code by Phony Mike on rumhacking.net. The Fire Emblem ones were generic checks that have been around for a long time. The Pokemon ones were implemented by me by reading documentation that was available on the Pokemon wiki everyone knows as Bulbapedia. And the Zelda one was interesting because only one tool existed that could modify the save file. It was reversed by the Lemon Man. This tool was written in Python, so I had to read it and figure out how to rewrite it in C code. And I guess that's it for now. Thanks for watching. If anyone's interested, I'm trying to post updates on what I'm working on as YouTube community posts, so please check those out. Well, see ya!